Good morning. Let's all rise in body and spirit and sing together hymn 188. I'll step back from the mic because I'm really loud. Come, come, whoever you are.
Good morning. We light this chalice to celebrate Unitarian Universalism. This is the church of the open mind. This is the church of the helping hands. This is the church of the loving heart. Together, we care for the church and each other.
Hello, welcome. My name is Melissa Rowland. I've been a member here for nearly 20 years. I'll be your worship associate this morning. I serve in the mission of this church as the vice president of the board. Reverend Mitra Jafarzadeh is our settled minister. She's on sabbatical. And Reverend Alice Diebel is serving our congregation in her absence. Today, our lay leader is Ann Shore. I warmly welcome you to St. John's Unitarian Universalist Church. This is a welcoming congregation. We welcome you regardless of your sexual orientation, gender identity, race, ethnicity, or any of the other ways that you may be the unique and beautiful person that you are. We welcome you. Please put your electronic devices in worship mode, and again, welcome. If you could please rise and turn to page 331 in your hymnal.
Please remain standing for the affirmation. This is the mission of our faith, to teach the fragile art of hospitality, to revere both the critical mind and the generous heart, to prove that diversity need not mean divisiveness, and to witness to all that we must hold the whole world in our hands. now's the time in our service where we invite you to come forward to place a stone in the sand for any joys or concerns you wish to silently recognize. If you would like your joy or concern shared with the community, please write it and place it near the sand, and I will read it. And for those of you online, please share your joy or concern in chat, and I'll read it. Okay. I don't know if there was anything online. I didn't get anything, but I do have this. Kathy Rack is grateful that her knee surgery was successful and she is home and healing well. She said she's especially grateful to Rich Overturf for accompanying her to the hospital at the last minute and waiting until surgery was over. We'll now place 2 additional stones for all the joys and concerns we hold in our hearts but have not yet found voice for.
I'm here to light a flame to carry with us downstairs for our children and youth programming. A reminder that we are all one community. Let us rejoice in our community together, grow in knowledge and understanding together, whether we are the roots of the church or the tiniest of leaves reaching toward the sun.
Our first reading today comes from Atul Gawande. The simple truth is that medicine exists to fight death and disease, and that is, of course, its most basic task. Death is the enemy, but the enemy has superior forces. Eventually, it wins. And in a war that you cannot win, you do not want a general who fights to the point of total annihilation. You do not want Custer. You want Robert E. Lee, someone who knew how to fight for the territory when he could and to surrender when he couldn't. Someone who understood that the damage is greatest if all we do is fight to the bitter end. Our second reading comes from Mary Oliver. To live in this world, you must be able to do three things: to love what is mortal, to hold it against your bones knowing your own life depends on it, and when the time comes, to let it go, to let it go. We will now collect an offering to support the good works of this church. Our Split the Plate partner for October is Cincy Recycle and Reuse Hub. If you want to donate directly to Cincy Recycle and Reuse Hub, please note that in your check or use an envelope to label that. Otherwise, cash donations will be split 50-50. Yes, please come forward. Sorry.
Good morning. Is that okay? The amount of plastic used in our society has always been very upsetting to me, and it just keeps getting worse. I mean, we use plastic when it really isn't needed. And then there's all the other waste that goes into the landfill. Well, now there's the Cincinnati Reuse and Rehab Cycle has a solution, and it's an incredibly well-organized solution and a fun place to volunteer. So here is Colleen McSwiggan to tell you all about it. Thank you.
Thanks, Debbie. Hello, I'm the Managing Director for the Cincinnati Recycling and Reuse Hub. Some of you may remember me. I came to talk probably about a year ago at this point here because you guys so graciously gave us a grant to help some of our programs. I will tell you that money went to go help an offsite collection in Arlington Heights for electronics and universal waste. So that was very much appreciated. That was actually our first offsite collection because usually you have to bring stuff down to us. We're in Lower Price Hill. We started about 18 months ago in April of 2021, specifically to just take the things that have places to go but no easy way to get them there. So you can bring them all to us. So we can take plastics, we can take eyeglasses that still work, we can take shoes that are still usable. And a lot of what we collect goes to other nonprofits as well. So we've taken pill bottles to Matthew 25 Ministries, we've taken shoes for Souls for Souls. We collect diapers for Sweet Cheeks Diaper Bank. If somebody has, half a pack of diapers when the kid outgrew them, we can take the rest and find a home for those. And our sole goal is just to keep things out of the landfill and to increase recycling and reuse so that we minimize the amount of greenhouse gases produced, which are causing climate change. I don't know how much you all follow this, but it's obviously an issue and it's getting worse. And the more that we can do now to mitigate those worst effects, the less that our children and grandchildren and future generations will have to worry about trying to fix that problem that we and our parents and grandparents have caused. So just thank you so much for having us here. Anything that you can give would be appreciated, and it will actually go to help another collection specifically for residents of Lower Price Hill so that we can take their old electronics and light bulbs and batteries and things like that actually have hazardous waste components to them, get them out of their homes and out of the environment so that they will hopefully not have any health effects due to those things being around for too long, basically. I'll be staying for the rest of the service, and I'll be in the back too if you want to ask any questions afterwards. But just thanks again for all of your help. It's very much appreciated because we're almost all volunteers and we can't do it without help from the community as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you again. Please give generously to our split the plate today.
Thank you so much, choir. That was just beautiful. Good morning. For those who don't know me, my name is Ann Schur, and I've been a member of St. John's for over 30 years. Unitarian Universalism encourages a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. So one way that plays out is that members occasionally take the pulpit, and I feel honored to have that privilege today. I have thought about death a lot. Mostly, that's because I spent 15 years as a hospice social worker. Partly, that's because I had a series of losses in my family in recent years. And partly, that's because I'm a worrier from a long line of worriers. And what could be more worrisome than one's own death? I'm probably more aware than your average person that death knows no age limits, that bad things happen to good people all the time, and that the repercussions of illness and death affect people on many, many levels. Today, I want to share some of my observations of what I learned and how I was affected by my years working with hospice patients and families. There'll be a musical interlude in the form of a video, and the lyrics to that video are in your order of service. After the video, I'll talk with you about the experiences I've had personally with the death of my loved ones, and will also tell you about an organization that I'm involved with called Ohio End of Life Options. Intellectually, we all know that death could come at any time. All we have to do is watch the news to know that accidents happen, people are in the wrong place at the wrong time, young people get ill and die, doctors misdiagnose, and the list goes on. Yet, thanks to medical technology, we also know that we could live a very long time. It's not unusual anymore to see people celebrate 60 years of marriage, or to know someone in their 90s, or even 100. Most of us have a healthy understanding that nothing in life is given, and we appreciate each day for our family, our friends, our jobs, our homes, and if we're lucky enough, our good health. Through my hospice work, I came to view death as an organic process that often followed a relatively predictable trajectory once the dying process began. The patients normally ate less and slept more as their death approached. Sometimes they became more socially withdrawn, not wanting to be bothered with food or drink at all. And slowly they lapsed into a coma-like state, which ended when they took their last breath. During this process, they lost the ability to swallow, and saliva pooled in their throat, causing audible congestion, sometimes called the death rattle. I witnessed this process often at the inpatient hospice where I worked, because our patients or their loved ones had chosen comfort care rather than aggressive treatment for their illnesses. Normally, they chose this because doctors had told them and their families that there was no cure for their condition and that they had a limited time left to live. Being told there is no cure is difficult to hear and a bitter pill to swallow. I'm sure some of you have been in this circumstance with a loved one. Maybe some of you have heard these words about your own condition. People faced with their own mortality or that of a loved one respond in the best way they know how. At the hospice where I worked, most people were grateful for the comfort and dignity their loved one received through hospice care, and they embraced their loved one's final days. Some people were suspicious, angry, and accusing hospice staff of killing their loved one. They felt hospice had been foisted on them and moved forward with fear and suspicion. Some individuals and families refused comfort medications because of religious or cultural reasons, or just basic mistrust. Some agreed to do not resuscitate orders and went back to knock on the doors of doctors who truly had no more cards up their sleeves. As a hospice social worker, I did my best to educate patients and families about the medical system that dictates how much, where, and when one can receive services. I tried to prepare them for what to expect physically, mentally, and financially as their loved one declined. For many, I was the bringer of bad news. My years working in hospice taught me that letting go is extremely difficult, and that sometimes loved ones cannot see beyond their own grief, and that patients suffer more than they need to because of this. I saw that the death of a loved one can further deepen discord in fractured families, and that pettiness and power struggles can make an already stressful situation explode into conflict or even violence. Luckily, I also witnessed that the dying of a loved one can be a beautiful, healing process that reinforces family ties, provides the opportunity to say, I love you, I'm sorry, I forgive you, please forgive me, and thank you. Did I mention I'm a worrier? Well, the other way that my work at hospice affected me was that it made me privy to a lot of ways that people die. Some of them aren't pretty. For me, a good death is one that minimizes pain and anxiety and that maximizes time with loved ones. I hope I am fortunate enough to have some notice before I die. I hope I can voice my opinions and have them be listened to by medical personnel. I have a healthcare power of attorney and living will in place, and I'm certain that my husband and son know that I don't want heroics if surviving means requiring around-the-clock care. That's me. Hopefully, you have advanced directives in place to guide your loved ones and doctors in case life happens and you can't speak for yourself. If you have them in place, congratulations. If not, see me after the talk today and I'll give you information about how to obtain them. The key to a good healthcare power of attorney, in my opinion, is that you pick someone who will have the strength to carry out your wishes, even if they don't agree with them. I think the most important thing we can do is talk about death with our families and loved ones. Unfortunately, for a lot of us, death is the great big elephant in the room that we try to pretend only happens to other people. Some medical personnel are just as uncomfortable having end-of-life discussions with their patients. Let me share how that played out in my family. Aunt Rose, age 83, had a form of leukemia. A frantic call from my Uncle Charlie brought me to Cleveland, where I found both my aunt and uncle floundering. Rose was falling and having severe reactions to the chemotherapy for her cancer. She had no idea what her prognosis was or how far, if any, the cancer had spread. She trusted her oncologist completely and assumed she would have full recovery. After falling 3 times in one day, she eventually wound up in the hospital, followed by rehab in a nursing home and more chemotherapy. She received aggressive treatment until she was again hospitalized for chemo-related side effects. After admitting that she was too tired for more chemotherapy, she agreed to hospice care. The oncologist called me incredulous that we were choosing hospice. I explained that my aunt had been under the impression that she could be completely cured and go back to a normal life. The oncologist had never stopped to ask her about her goals of care. Rose died shortly after entering hospice services. In my experience with terminally ill people, one of the hardest things to accept is the gradual loss of independence. Going from a highly functional adult to someone who can't drive, who needs help buying groceries, to someone who needs help with daily functions and personal care is a humiliating process for most people. A self-described control freak, my father was in the final stage of cancer, which was complicated by COPD. As he declined, he realized he would soon have to leave his home and be dependent on others for his basic care. In addition, he was experiencing pain and other symptoms that left him constantly uncomfortable. He had reached a point where he no longer had an acceptable life, and the only future held more indignities, more suffering. I can only imagine the sheer physical effort, and not to mention the emotional strength it took to kill himself with a gun, but that's what he did. He left us a letter explaining that he had had an extraordinary life and wishing us all the same, but explaining, I see no point in seeing this cancer through to the end. I'm at peace with my father's decision. He was terminally ill, with the only option being more suffering and loss of control. I am not at peace with his means of dying. If he had lived in Washington, D.C., Oregon, Maine, or one of the other 7 states that permit medical aid in dying, a physician could have prescribed life-ending medication that would have allowed him to go peacefully and in comfort at a time of his choosing, surrounded by those who loved him. Instead, he died violently and alone, and our family had to deal with the trauma of finding him. At this point, 9 states and the District of Columbia have death with dignity laws that allow qualified, mentally competent individuals to obtain life-ending medication when they become terminally ill. As a society, we struggle with aging, decline, and death. Many doctors still avoid being open with patients about their prognosis and options. Hospice services are often called in too late, so that aging bodies suffer for many months or even years before comfort care is brought in. We allow politics and the religious beliefs of a few to define the rights of dying individuals. As a hospice social worker, I tried to accept people where they were and to honor their and their family's history. I tried to empower them to seek more information if that's what they needed. As an individual, I try to live each day with an active appreciation for all I have right now. I'm convinced there should be a full range of options available to those diagnosed with terminal illness that includes medical aid in dying, as well as palliative care and hospice services. I've become involved with the Ohio End of Life Options, a nonprofit, nonpartisan, non-sectarian organization aiming to have legislation passed in Ohio that is modeled after death with dignity laws in other states. I do what I can to ease my own anxieties about dying. I remind myself that yes, life will happen, changes will come, some of them difficult, but I have a family, a network of friends, and a church family who will love and support me each step of the way. I have advanced directives in place to allow my wishes to be known even when I can't voice them. And I share my ideas of what constitutes a life worth living for me. As much as this sermon has been about dying, I hope you will see that it is also about living, appreciating this one life you have been given, making the most of your blessings, communicating your needs and wants, healing negativity in yourself and in your relationships, living like today may be your last. Wherever you are on your journey, I wish you peace, happiness, and the support of this loving community. Thanks for listening today.
I'm going to share some announcements. They are listed in your order of service on the inside of the back page. Just wanted to remind you that Earth Spirit is going to provide the service on October 30th. And if you want to bring a photo of someone who has recently departed for the altar, that would be a good time to do that. Flowers today were donated by Ann Fletcher in honor of her mother-in-law, Elaine Fletcher's birthday. We do have a soup and bread lunch after service today. This will be the first one of the fall. The money for the soup and bread luncheon goes towards the bread program in our sister church in St. Laszlo. Do we have any other announcements? Oh, yeah. Let's see, 354? If you want to open your hymnal to 354. Yeah, oh, is there another announcement? I'm sorry. Come forward, come forward. This is really Lindsay.
We couldn't let you go without one more opportunity to stay after service. After all, today you're going to have lunch. But next week on October 23rd, we're inviting you to join us again in the sanctuary after coffee. Roberto will be with us, so those of you at home aren't left out. And we won't go past 1:30, so you won't miss your lunch, and you'll enjoy it more if you're hungry, right? Last week, you had a chance to thank all the generous volunteers who make our caring community work. We will reveal this week on the 23rd the nitty-gritty, the inner gears of how it works, and a ways to spread some WD-40 on the parts to make it smoother.
We'll share why we volunteer our time and talents with St. John's. You'll meet team leaders so you can associate names and faces. You'll learn about the newest volunteer opportunities at St. John's.
So just because you've done it before, come. Just because you're a new member, come. Just because you're a visitor, aren't you curious? Come. And especially if you don't have time, come. I've been invited to volunteer a lot in my 78 years. But until I came to St. John's as a new member, I'd never heard this. Nancy Henry said, if it doesn't feel right to you, say no. Being able to say no is sacred. And that changed my view of volunteering from should to freedom, and from from chores to fun.
We continue to create a caring community together. So come, join us next week after the service.
Thank you. I'm going this way.
354, there are a lot of verses, but they're all relevant. So we're going to sing them, and we will sing them with laughter and maybe crying, but they're lovely. So 354, please rise.
In days of pre-COVID, we used to hold hands. I know we don't do that anymore, but if you would connect some way, even if it's just an elbow bump. I love that, and I think we miss that. So let's connect. We leave this gathered community,
But we don't leave our connection.
our concerns, our care for each other,
Our service to each other, to the world, and to our faith continues.
until we are together again, friends.
Be strong, be well, be true, be loving.
Thank you. Stay for soup.